BHP shareholders are celebrating after the company posted the biggest interim profit in Australian corporate history today. The thumping $10.6 billion half-year result is fanning new debate about the government's resource tax and whether it's collecting enough from the big miners. Political correspondent Tom Iggulden reports.
Today's result is a whopping 72% bigger than last year's half-yearly profit.
We are very proud of a record set of results. The company is extremely well configured around enormous resource base to continue to grow.
And it was revealed today just how much of that growth the federal government will miss out on after backing down on its original mining tax proposal. Treasury figures show Kevin Rudd's version would have taken in close to $100 billion. Now it's closer to $40 billion, a huge return for the mining industry, say critics, for a comparatively cheap advertising campaign.
Our hard work creates Australia's biggest exports.
We saw BHP and its fellow companies through a $22 million investment save themselves from a $60 billion tax, and the politicians went to water. It's called buying democracy. It's called buying influence, and it works. And we've got to do a lot more to see that there's redress for that, because otherwise BHP and the other companies who are extracting Australia's natural resources are not contributing properly to this nation's future.
The Greens want the original tax reinstated. Liberal Western Australian Premier Colin Barnett wants it dropped altogether.
Indeed, it may well be that some of the major mining companies actually pay less tax under this than they paid before. This thing is a complete shambles.
But the Prime Minister's standing her ground.
We will deliver through the Australian Parliament the tax as I agreed it with Australia's biggest mining companies. We will not be compromising that agreement in order to secure the legislation through.
Wayne Swan says the government was upfront about collecting less tax from mining companies and says the $60 billion give-back is only an estimate.
A 10-year projection is not one that you can necessarily say is wholly written. It's highly variable, highly subject to change.
Refugees are welcome!
At Villawood Detention Centre tonight, some inmates are hoping the federal government will be just as flexible with them. After a highly emotional funeral for victims of the Christmas Island boat tragedy, relatives of the dead don't want to go back to Christmas Island. Instead, they want to stay in Sydney's Villawood Detention Centre while their cases are being processed.
She goes, I can't go back there at all. That island reminds her of her sister.
Family members say they'll physically resist removal from Villawood Detention Centre tomorrow morning, and protesters backing the asylum seekers confronted Immigration Minister Chris Bowen tonight at an event at the Sydney Institute.
Play school starts later.
At the centre of the issue, 8-year-old Sinan Khalik, who was orphaned by the boat tragedy.
He was brought to Sydney for the funeral of his family, and quite separate to that, sensitively and appropriately, he will be moved into the community.
Opposition Immigration Minister Scott Morrison has backed down from his comments made yesterday about the cost of bringing the relatives to Sydney from Christmas Island for the funeral. But the issue hasn't ended there. Joe Hockey publicly disagreed with Mr Morrison's stance before his back down and is now defending further questions about a split in senior Liberal ranks.
In your party?
No split. We all love each other.
They're at each other's throats. You see it in the Parliament all the time, and you see it in public now.
And there's some evidence that there might be some truth to that claim. A senior anonymous Liberal Party staffer posted a scathing criticism of Mr Hockey's comments about asylum seekers on a Conservative website. His comments were seen as the final straw. Our parliamentary team is furious, it says, after a string of gaffes and failures by Mr Hockey. The post was soon taken down. Tom Iggulden, Lateline.